All right. Good morning. I'm gonna get some gloves on. And we're gonna pull. We're gonna pull the head, cylinder head, off of the midget here. Um, it's got a blown head gasket right back here by the fourth cylinder head. It gets super hot back there in general, so I'm not surprised. To make sure there's not a lot of damage. I've already prepped this a little bit, so you'll notice this void here, this kind of vacuum. That's where the exhaust header goes. The 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 manifold, the inlet manifold, and the carburetors normally are. I've already pulled the distributor spark plug heads off and everything. I got a few more things to tidy up here before we can actually start pulling stuff. You'll notice that I've still got some of the emission controls on, and there's still coolant in this tank. So I have to pull the coolant out. It's going to be a disaster, a huge mess. So that'll be fun. And then really just the valve cover comes off. And then it's like 10 bolts, and this whole thing's just kind of like rise. We'll see if that actually happens, though. All right, let me get some gloves on and we'll get started. Hello again. All right. Cool. All right, I'm gonna get started. I'll try to watch for your questions. The laptop is not next to me, so I may not see it. Also, these gloves don't have very good tactile feedback. Command Shift plus. Cool. All right. So first things first, I'm gonna pull. Oh, it's probably super loud. Sorry, let me move away from the microphone. It's good to sit. So I'm gonna pull the rest of these kind of emission control features off. So this, what this does is this scavenges kind of any vaporized oil or any kind of gases that may escape from the engine block here that don't make it out through the exhaust. It comes up through this little hole here. And a lot of people close this off. Honestly, it doesn't affect performance at all. So I leave it on. It's fine. It's like original. It goes into this canister, which is just off screen. Let's see it over there. So it goes into that canister there. It's just a charcoal canister. It's just filtering out the crap that comes through here. There's another line here that feeds through to the carburetors. So the carburetors also have that, so any fuel vapors also get seeded through there. It's called emissions control, but this is a 74 model. It's prior to the really extreme emissions controls. And it's not a California car, so it doesn't have a lot of the California regulations in it. So I leave it on just because those don't leak into the chamber, the passenger cab, and I like that. All right, so that's off. I'm going to keep this on here for a hot minute. The last time I removed this, I got sprayed with coolant. I'm not a fan of that. So I'm going to leave this line here. This feeds into the heater box. Hey, there's the heater box back here. We don't use the heater on this car ever. It's just there for purely cosmetic purposes now. I might remove it in the future, but it's there. The next thing I'm going to remove is this line here. Jeez, this camera's just shy of the right size. I'm going to remove this line here. I'm probably going to get wet, so I'm going to grab some blue towels, but I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit to see if I get some coolant. There shouldn't be any coolant in this line here at all. It should be void of coolant. there. Let me grab some blue towels just in case. Running low on blue towels. I love these things. They're super low lint, which is great. I use them a lot. Like you'll see, sometimes I'll have them plugged into the holes inside of engine blocks. Just gonna have this at the ready in case there's some lingering fluid in here, and then we're just gonna get generous. Yeah. All right. Doesn't want to separate from the side. So I could take this blade here and kind of coax it a little bit, and not just be kind of stuck onto the paint. Just kind of lift it a little bit. I don't want to damage it too much. I like to reuse this line. A lot of times when I'm working on these things, I'll just kind of start replacing rubbers. It's not a bad idea, but this is a pretty fresh rubber hose. I was ever worried about this thing leaking. I don't think I have to worry about that. Let's try from this side. See if we get a better pull. A little bit more. So I'm not worried about paint on this side. I kind of, very generously scraping away with a metal screwdriver blade. This is part of the head. It's all going to be repainted after I resurface it. All right. Stop that off. Make sure the car's in gear, so I don't go rolling away. There we go. All right, so we have a little bit of fluid coming out. I'm just going to come in here with the blue towel. Just kind of clean it up. You can see there's a little bit of a bell end on it. That's probably why it's so hard to get off. I'm just going to come in here. Stick that blue towel there, and that's it. This is now free. If I can get it off here as well, I will. I'm going to be a little more careful to not repainting this piece. Come and loosen it up a little bit. There we go. Break that seal. Cool. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to set it aside. Let's see. Someone's got a question for me. How long does this repair typically take? You know what? I haven't the slightest clue. I've never pulled the cylinder head off of a car before. Looking at it, if I don't cock it up too much, it should be done. Probably about 45 minutes to an hour. There's not a lot to pull off that's left, so we'll see how far it goes. But knowing me, this will probably be like an all-day adventure. So we'll see. All right. For point of reference, I haven't even gotten to the part where I'm actually removing the cylinder head yet. This is just preparation for the removal. Let me reform this a little bit better. Put this in here. Okay. That'll keep any fluids from leaking out for the time being. Next up, let's see here. Next up, I think we're going to be pulling. Let's pull the valve cover off. Actually, let's pull this off next. This has probably got fluid in it as well. It's back here. So this is the heater box assembly. Coolant actually feeds into the heater box. Air comes in through this side and pushes the hot water, the air over the hot water, which pushes it into the cab. These things have heaters but not air conditioning. These heaters are cheap. You've got hot water running through the car. Let's just push it into the back of the cab. I need to remove this little gizmo here. You see here there's a little valve that turns on and off whether or not you want hot water pumping through the heater. It's off right now. There shouldn't be a lot of excess coolant in here. This should also come off pretty cleanly just like before. So I'm going to remove the piping from here and get this off real quickly as well. Alright, I'll loosen this up a little bit. Yep, oh, a little bit of coolant left in there. I'm going to set this pipe aside as I grab a blue towel to kind of clean up that mess. Yes. What that tells me is this is going to be a fun detour to get the rest of the coolant out of this car. Which sucks. There's no drain plug on these things. So effectively, what you need to do is pull one of the lower pipes out and just let it like drain out of the car. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this piece down here. It's going to be hard to see. It's behind the shroud, which I'll try to lift off and remove in a second. I'm pretty sure it's only being held by a couple screws. But down in here is the lower return pipe. It comes from the engine. It actually feeds in. So the radiator takes it from the top here, pumps it through here, pushes it through, and then it feeds down here back into the engine block. I'm going to pull that off and just get coolant everywhere. I'm going to get a pan, put it in the bottom. I'll be right back. Grab that pan. So I'm going to use this to catch all the coolant. It's probably not going to be big enough. It might just be big enough. I'm going to slide this under the car, kind of position it. Just right around here, actually. Okay. I'm now going to unscrew this lower return, and I'm just going to have it drain out. It's going to kind of get everywhere. Yeah. Good question, actually. I should probably check. Hey, everybody. Marco goes to the internet for the first question of the day. It's not. Okay. I'm asking the world probably know this by now, but is coolant corrosive to paint? I'm under the impression that it is not, but I've been fearful that it actually is for a long time. Okay, it's not if I get it off quickly, because I don't want the paint to start kind of shedding away. All right, it's hot here today. All right, let's pull this. Let's get this coolant out. Let's get going. This will either be the greatest thing I've ever done for coolant removal, or it'll be a travesty. I think travesty might be because I can't get to it without moving the fan. Let me try from this side instead. What I really should do is install a tap where I could release. Take this fan shroud off. This is not helping me in the slightest. Got the little longest screw. One. Set this aside. This is passenger side shroud. Alright, second extremely long screw removed. Add these reversed. Alright, these are now stored. I gotta take these bolts off. Those are probably 13mm heads, which I've already got rigged up. Let's loosen them. Actually, yeah, let's super loosen them. That's one. That's two. This is right, this is left. Right, this is left. Okay, now that I've set aside in a safe spot, you can kind of see it's already loosened up. I should be able just to lift this sucker should be the operative word here. I don't see the problem here. Apparently this is all one. Okay. And okay, I'm gonna unbolt this lower line. Right here. And I'll make a big mess. Oh yeah, nice and full of fluid. Okay. One more screw to unscrew. And drop my screwdriver. Let me get a longer one. I know it's not very exciting seeing the top of my head.
Got a bolt spot at all?
Not yet. But not a really good angle. I need to get down in here. There we go. Okay. Coolant is draining. Everywhere but in the bucket. Perfect. If you are working on a car, don't do it in a garage with dogs. Coolant is like super sweet tasting to them or something, and it'll basically kill them. So you can see it now behind me, right in here. That's the coolant draining out of the radiator, reservoir, and the engine block. I totally missed the bucket, of course. So I'll clean that up in a second. Yeah, so for this repair, actually, now that I can get back to it, what's happening, and while this is draining, I can kind of take off these gloves real quickly, show you all why I'm doing this, I guess. The symptoms that led to this. This car has been in there we go. Much better. This car has been in various states of repair for like the last 2.5 years. It's a nice car. I like this car a lot. It's one of the first cars that I bought. Let's go on a little tour. So this is the car that I'm working on today. This is a 1974 MG Midget. It's a great little car. It is a tiny, tiny car. It is hilariously undersized for me. I'm oversized for it. I've had this car for about 5 years now. And about 2.5 years in, it started producing troubles. Lots of fun things. The exhaust cracked. The header cracked twice. The backing plate cracked. I have to pull the engine and repair it. It's just now ready to get back onto the road. Like, everything's ready. I got a new set of rebuilt carburetors, so you can get actual air and fuel mixture in here. I did all the sorts of things you need to do to get it running. And it is ready. In fact, it actually started up recently, which was great to see. The problem is back here. If you could see all that charring on the back, the left corner there of the video, that is exhaust leaking from the engine. So whenever this thing would run, it would be loud. It would sound like there was no exhaust on it. It would be like, bah, 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 like a race car, but it's not a race car because it's a very tiny little engine. That charring, that black charring right there in the center of the screen, that's from a blown head gasket. So there's a gasket. And a head gasket, well, gaskets in general, is just a very fancy word for a seal. So it's a piece of, depends on the material, it may be rubber, it may be cardboard, maybe tons of things, but different kinds of fibers. Anyways, that seal is broken in the back, so it's not keeping the exhaust inside the car. That reduces performance. It just makes it so that if I kept running it this way, the engine will eventually basically just explode. Or the engine block will crack and things will happen that aren't good. So, in order to fix that, this unit here where the spark plugs are, it comes in 2 sections. The very top here, and you're about to see it get really interesting really quick when I start pulling away these covers. This whole thing modulates when each of the cylinder fires. So this is a 4-cylinder engine. 1, 2, 3, 4 spark plugs. Each of them kind of move in different varying degrees. As it combusts, air and fuel get mixed in, combustion leaves out, and that whole process makes engine go forward, or makes engine move, I guess. So now that I got the coolant out, what I'm going to do is drop some paper towels. So this valve train will come off, this black cover, and then the top half of this red cover here, you can kind of see there's a seam. So here's where I was talking about exhaust and fuel goes in. Circles are where air and fuel go in to be combust. The squares are where the exhaust comes out. Right here is a bit of a lip. That's where the cylinder head, which has the spark plugs and combustion, and the engine body, the big steel chunk of metal down here that holds the cylinders, meets. So this whole cylinder head comes off, and there's a gasket that meets between where these two things meet. It's you'll see in a second. Well, you'll see it in a couple minutes. Seconds might be a bit of an exaggeration. Let's back up here. That's centered enough. All right. I've made a huge mess. I'm gonna let this sit though. Put this camera back on. Hey everybody. I'm gonna pull this valve train cover off. So this valve train cover keeps the valves safe. So let me get another blue towel. These are the blue towels that I've been using, by the way. These things are from Scott. They're Shop Essentials. They're super great. They are like grease and oil absorbent. They're super strong even when wet. And they're low lint. Like if you ever take another paper towel and you kind of crumple it up, it gets all like linty. This doesn't do that, which I like. It's a great work on cars. So this little pipe, there's some coolant in the heater here. It's super low coolant. I'm going to just plug it up. I don't have the drain pan over here. I don't want it to leak all over the car body and everything. So here. Let that run out. Not too much. Okay, great. So this is just going to be floating around in here. I could take it off from this end as well, but I think I'm just going to leave it for the time being. Let me get a new pair of gloves on, and then take this valve train cover off. We'll see what goes on inside there. Now, if you have a modern car, this is nothing like a modern car. I mean, yeah, the basic components are there. Like, it's an engine, and it goes vroom when you press down that gas pedal. But everything from how the gas gets to the engine, how the engine combusts, a lot of these stuff are different than modern cars. So, for example, we're about to make the valve train cover. This is a single rocker assembly. Most cars have like duals and more complex things. But the point I want to get at is, you've got a blown head gasket on your modern car. Now, modern car is like, if it's from 1990 and above, it effectively is a modern car. These cars were older, they were simpler, makes it easier to work on. I'm going to remove these bolts here. There's two of them, and they're not a 13. I think these are going to be around a 15 millimeter. Alright, so I've got a 15 millimeter. Not quite, let's try 60. Or different sizes. See this one? Too big. Oh, it turns out I don't have the right size head for this. Bingo, got it. All right. So these should come off pretty quickly. It's just 2 bolts holding this valve train cover on. This valve train cover is just to cover up the top of the valve train. There we go. They shouldn't be too terribly tight. If they are, get a breaker bar and some leverage. There we go. Go. All right. These bolts are super long. They go all the way down to the body of the car. In fact, when you're lifting the engine out, when we hoisted the engine, we use these same bolts to pull them out. They're super interesting in shape. They have a thread on the inside rather than on the outside. So they're smooth on the outside, which makes it easy to attach lifting tools and other things to them. They're also super, super strong. All right. I've got the second valve train cover off. Let me go and mark these very quickly. This is front, this is rear. These are my tools. All right, at this point now, this should just kind of come up and off. Now it's got a seal on there, which means it's right off. And that's it. So this just keeps the oil that gets rotated around in the engine from spraying everywhere in the car, just the cover for the valve train. And this is the valve train here. This is the thing that makes all kind of the magic happen when it comes to the automobile's combustion. I'll go over it in a second. Then this is what we're basically replacing here. So this here is a cork gasket. You can see here there's kind of a, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a cork lining on this inside here. That's a gasket. There's one of these that's a bit different on the bottom of this cover that's blown out. Valve train, set that aside. And so what we have here is each one of these has 2 tappets. And you can see here that they're all at varying angles. Well, I guess you can't really see from this camera angle, but if we borrow this again, load up cam, here. You can see that each of these rods is in varying heights. When the engine's running, these two things dance back and forth. They control valves. On the bottom of each of these sides of the pistons is a valve. One valve lets air and gas in, one valve lets exhaust fumes out. So it's kind of like a little circle. So air and fuel comes in, exhaust comes out of the bottom here. And that controls when these valves open. All of these are controlled by the engines. You see these kind of rods coming out of here. These are called push rods. These push rods go all the way into the engine block. And as the engine spins, it's got little raised bits of metal that rotate in concert with the engine on the drive shaft here, on the engine's center axis. And as it spins, it pushes these rods up and down. That's how the engine does all its timing. That's effectively it. So that is timed with the ignition of the spark, so it knows just the right time when the cylinder's in just the right position, and it has air and gas that's been compressed, when to actually ignite, and then on the downstroke it opens up the exhaust valve that lets air out. And that's it. That's all this head does, effectively. It's just there to basically coordinate the ignition, the controlled explosion inside the engine in order to get this stuff to show. So what I need to do next is you see that there are a series of red bolts on the outside here. There are 5 of them in total. And on the inside here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 more, and there's 1 more bolt that I have to remove. There's should be 10 in total. And then once I remove all those bolts, this whole thing will come up. So I'm going to put this back here. And let's move quickly through this so we can get this head off. See if I can do it within the next 30 minutes or so, if I don't hit too much trouble on the way. I am going to remove, actually it's raining pretty bad outside. Let me push the other car in real quickly. There's another car right here that's normally not halfway out of the garage. Alright. Now that this car's in the garage, it won't be as wet. It's raining here. I hope the weather's nice wherever you all are. Cool. Alright, let's get started. I'm going to find the right size. This is not the right size, but I know which one is. So 13 seems too small. Pretty sure I need a 15 millimeter. Alright. Let's try you. Yep, alright, got it. Let's see. What is assemblies need to be removed? Let's start with these bolts from back here. Nope, not reverse threaded. Oh, they're really on there. Let me check the order for these bolts. Some of these things have a specific order you need to take them out on. There we go. Okay. So the first one looks like it's going to be here. This will be first. I'm going to need to get a raise extension. That's one, and then two is on the inside. Okay. When you're an amateur, it's best to check. Check twice, break once. No, this is going to be too tough for this. Let me get a breaker bar. So a breaker bar, it's just like those ratchets, only there's no ratcheting mechanism. There's nothing to break. You just full force. I'm going to pull this towards me. Most amount of leverage. Here we go. All right. Once you've got it kind of cracked, you can move back to a ratchet if you so desire. It's really up to you. And what I was afraid was going to happen actually happened. These are these threads and studs aren't actually welded into the block. They're actually double threaded, which happens a lot when I take these cars apart, is that when you unscrew it, you won't unscrew the bolt on the top like you're supposed to, or like you'd imagine would. You actually unscrew it from the engine itself. There's a second thread here. This is okay. I'm going to replace every single one of these studs. If you're going through the trouble of removing this, remove and replace all of these kind of parts. They get warped, they get tired out, they get thread stretched, a bunch of stuff like that. So this one, you can see the screw has been painted over so many times it's just kind of like glued effectively to the bolt. This is the first one. I'm going to set this aside in no uncertain order. I'm not keeping track of where these come from because I don't care. They're getting replaced. They're getting all fresh new ones. See what's going on. All right. So the second one to remove looks like it's going to be this one, my best bet. Same thing, breaker bar. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to set it up so that's going counterclockwise, anti-clockwise. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to support the centerpiece here so it doesn't torque and twist. I'm just going to pull until... There we go. All right. That loosened. Odds are this hasn't been loosened up in years. And you see this one here, the nut is just coming straight off like it was supposed to. Now for these inside bolts and nuts, I'm probably going to keep them. So I do want to keep track of which one came off of when. I'm going to take this one out here. Almost off. Boom. So just the nut came off the bolt this time, which is fine. You'll get a mixture, especially on these outside engine screws. If you've had amateur paint jobs, which the previous owner did, on the engine, kind of just sprayed everything wholesale, that's what you'll get. So I'm going to set this one aside and keep track of which one it came off of. This is number 2 on the engine. All right. The next one in this order is going to be, Marco checks, number 3, which is the bolt to the right of this one. So this is right over the number 3 engine. I'm going to do the same thing. Very carefully, set it up, get it so I got a good amount of pull on it, and then just very gently but with firm, constant pressure. There it goes. Okay. Yeah. These are tough. If you're not as big as I am, I'm a big guy in general, and you're having a trouble with these, the best thing to do is to get leverage. So if you have like a hollow broom handle or something else, or a friend, I'll show you in the next bolt how you can get leverage to get these guys off. All right. Number 3, you are clear now. Okay, set you aside and keep track of where you came from. These also look like they have spacers on them. This one did, the other one did not. You always find such fascinating things when you pull these cars apart. This had a washer on it. That's what I've come to expect, is to see washers and nuts. And sometimes even a series of washers. The other one didn't. Which just means the last time this head was rebuilt wasn't done right. Okay, so number 4 is going to be this bolt back here. This one right here. Same thing. You're going to line it up, get it in there. Now these come off a little bit easier for me. This one doesn't. Alright. I'm going to show you how to get a little more torque on here. So, what you're going to want to do is grab some piping. It's got a hole in it. This is a metal pipe. I'm going to slip it over the end of my handle here. I just got a little extra leverage now. And, with one hand, I can easily turn this die now. So if you're having trouble getting these off, leverage. Science works in these things. Like, you can't deny physics and science. Set that aside. Loudly. Just going to get this guy unscrewed a little bit here, get it started. Cool. This guy, same deal. Guess what came up with it? The whole kit and caboodle. Wonderful. The whole bolt came up. You want to watch out. This one here has a lot of rust on it. It's going to be good to replace this, especially since it's close to the affected area. The blowing head gasket's right here in this corner. These bolts are likely to warp out of shape just because the amount of excessive heat that's happening when you have the combustion blowing out past where it's supposed to be contained. You'll want to replace these for sure. Just to further drive that point home, this is the first bolt we took off, and the second one, left and right. And you can see the amount of surface rust that's on that second bolt. Not a good sign for me, as it means that there may be more damage to just the head gasket. All right, that was number 4. Let's do number 5, which is going to be on this side here. So we'll kind of do in reverse order from the inside out. Easy enough to remember. Let's see if I can get this one. No. Why work harder when you can work smarter? So much easier. I'm gonna leave this pipe somewhere nearby. I'm gonna need it again real soon, I think. Now, what is really promising is these are coming off real clean. They're not shearing at the bottom. This one here we see has a lot of soot and grossness in it. Again, more cause to concern. There might be a lot more damage in here than I may have anticipated initially. That's a good question. How do I replace these things? Obviously, this isn't something you just go to Home Depot to get. I am fortunate that in my area here in Northern Virginia, DC metro area, there's actually several classic car shops. And there's one in particular called British Heritage, British Motors Heritage, something like that. I can't remember the name of it now. I'm going to do them a disservice. They're formerly called Motorhead. They have new ownership there. They're super bright guys, really passionate about classic cars. And they operate on these kinds of cars. MG, this is an MG, Triumphs, those kind of breeds, Jaguar, of classic English sports cars. So I'll normally start sourcing parts through them. They have a lot of experience in the industry. All this stuff you can get online. There's a very popular website called Moz, M-O-S-S, Moz Motors. There's also Victoria British, which is another online site. And most of these will have either reproductions, new old stock, or upgrades for these kinds of parts. Now, I'm going to keep going while we talk about this. Now, not every part is made equally. So I've got a bit dirty in here. It's a little red. So I'm going to clean this out real quickly with my thumb, just so that I don't get any excess paint chips inside of the valve train here. Not every car shop is made equal. In fact, a lot of the online retailers are there to supply the demand for repairs for these things. Not all of them have the best quality. If you have a local shop in your area, and even if you don't, let me look up their name actually. I'd be at this service right now. British Standard Motors. They're in Fairfax, Virginia. Great shop. I always love dropping by. They've got some fantastic cars that they're always working on. Leaves it super fun to watch. And just kind of drop by their shop and say hi. But if you need parts, call Rollo up on the front desk. He does a fantastic job sourcing parts. They've been doing this for years. They know which online sources are trusted. And they have a supply of their own parts in stock. So if you need something and you can't find it or you want to get a good quality, give them a call. They'll help you out for sure. And if they can't source it directly, they'll let you know where you can source it. So as a part of this job, I need to also what they call resurface the head. And that's basically what you'd imagine it would be. Sandblast all the paint off of it, clean it up, really make sure that it's nice and fresh metal. No deformities, no oddities, no weird bits and bobs. I can't do that. I mean, I can, fumble my way through here we go. Here's another one where whole kit and caboodle comes off. I can fumble my way through some of the more common repairs, but I simply can't resurface these heads. So here's what these bolts look like. This one came off all in one go. It's covered in oil, and that's to be expected. That's a good thing. It goes all the way down into the engine block, so I'm not surprised here. This one I might end up replacing. We'll see. I'm going to talk to British Standard Motor, see what they recommend for these things. All right. On to the next one, which is going to be this outside one here. The last one on our internal row for removal. Then we've got just a few more bolts to get off. Okay, this one came off like we've come to expect these inside ones. This one also has a washer on it. And in addition, if you're doing this kind of classic stuff, I'm by no means an expert at all. Everything I'm doing here comes with that warranty. I have no idea what I'm doing. Check online. Forums are great. For every car you can imagine, even modern cars, you'll find a forum about that car with people that are generally good about giving advice on stuff. So we've got just a few more to remove. I'm going off the unscrew guide for a MGB engine. This is an MG Midget. It's a smaller engine, still a Series A. This one's an MGB back here, so there's not going to be as many bolts. This guide I'm looking at here says there's 11, but I don't think there's going to be 11. I think we're going to find that once we remove this one, that'll be the last one. And then we're just going to kind of try to pull this head off all together in one spelt swoop and see how that gets us. So let's get these last two bolts off. And I'm going to start with, what do they recommend? They recommend this one next. I can't do it. There we go. Cracked it. Now this is the same deal as before. The whole rod's coming off here. And I know this rod's coming off because I've taken it off several times. And you can see here, that dark soot, that's where the combustion's escaping. It's right around there. It's kind of that white charring there as well, super hot flashes. That's how I discovered the leak in the first place, was when I started digging around in there. So I'm replacing this one. It looks a little warped for me. I'm going to replace this bolt along with all the others. Don't care about this. They're running away. Goodbye. So long. Okay. Now for what I imagine is the last bolts. But I could be wrong. Again, I'm going off of a guide that's not a midget. Unfortunately, midgets are like second-class sports cars. Most people like the bigger engines of the MGBs. Not that I'm complaining. Bigger engines are always more fun. But I do like driving around these little guys. There's just something about them. You just can't beat it. Oh, I felt the whole thing shudder a little bit. I think this might be the last bolt. Not quite there yet. Not quite. A little bit more grip. Super nervous now. This is like the big reveal. Is this going to be a super minor problem, or is it going to be a whole new engine? About to find out. Again, 4 for 4. Whole stud comes out. Not surprised. All right. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, it's moving a little bit. I'd love to clean it up. Let's grab that back here and up here. It's separating slowly. I think one of these bolts is actually one that loads, because the rear has come up really easily, but the front has not budged at all. Oh, I'll take that back. Yes, it has. Oh, it's heavy. Oh, yeah, really heavy. Come on. If you have a friend, use a friend. I just noticed some things real quickly. First is the temperature gauge is still attached. I need to remove that real quickly. What? You know what I like. Just one or two is fine. I need to get this guy off here. That's our temperature sensor. Just going to grab a handful real quickly. 14, 13s. See if 14 fits. No, bigger. Much bigger. Let's see if a 19 fits. Smaller. Much smaller. Alright, somewhere in between. Cinderella. Too big. For an 18, it's probably a 17, 16. Let's try 15. Too small. You're going to save the suspense here. I'm going to go with one of these. My grandfather called these knuckle busters. The reason being, it's an adjustable, this is an adjustable wrench. They always slip off and they always hit you right in the knuckle. So, let's see if this comes off easily. I don't like having this thing suspended off of the ground like it is. Okay, I feel better now that it's sat back down. Thank you. Almost off. It's also super soft. Every time you turn, it'll loosen or tighten a little bit. They're great for me now because I don't have the right tool, but boy, would I rather have the right tool. There we go. It's coming off now. Alright. Liberated. So all this is it's a thermometer. I mean, plain and simple. The simplicity of these cars is awesome. Makes it really easy to diagnose a problem. Alright, let's get this bad boy back off again. Heavy, 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 heavy. Heavy, heavy, heavy. There we go. Alright. Freedom. Some of the push rods came out. That's okay. I'm going to set this down. Woo! That's it. The head's off the engine. Holy cow. What we're left is what you'd expect. This is the engine block. Came off in one fell swoop. You see there's no gasket on here on this side. There will be on another side. I'm going to go and dry these off real quickly. There's a little bit of want leaked in on some of these pieces. So I want to dry that off right now. Get this oil off of these rods. I'm going to change the oil as well. I'm not going to use the same oil that's been in here. Even though it's fresh and clean oil, I don't want to take any chances when I rebuild the head and put it back on. So that's it here. You can see there's still 2 left in here. These are the push rods. These are the things that go up and down effectively and push those dampeners and kind of change the modulate the head. The head does all the action. Down here it's just cylinders. These are just dumb combustion chambers. I'm going to clean these up. They're all full of soot and combust, which is fine. So I'm going to grab the camera. I'm going to show you exactly where the problem is. And so far, we're actually looking good so far. I don't see any major issues that I should be concerned about. There's no leaks where the coolant should be running. There's no excessive entries. I'll show you exactly where the gasket blew out. It's super easy to see now that this thing's off. Let me dry my face because I'm just dripping sweat. Whew. Okay, so take my gloves off as well, as they are also now just swimming pool of sweat. So let's take a look here. It's kind of cool to see how the gaskets and seals form. Pull this down real quickly. All right. So if you can see here, this is kind of the cylinder. Each of these they're concave. These are the cylinder heads. They're all at various stages in their strokes. You can see here there's actually some scruff down in there. These are okay, they're just full of a little bit of damp wetness. But over here especially, you can see like it's rough surfaced. That's actually okay. The cylinder head looks to be in good shape. It's just that it needs to be cleaned up and kind of just resurfaced a little bit. I don't see any damage in the cylinder head at all. If you see right here, see that little brown trail that leads to the screw hole? That's where the gasket blew out. That's exactly where the scorch marks are on this side. You can kind of see how the explosion would leak out there. And if we go take a field trip over to the head, which I have unceremoniously just laying on the ground. So here's the head that we just pulled off. You know what? We don't need the front-facing camera for this. Here's the head that we just pulled off. It's kind of laying on its side, so this was the top here. It's laying on its side there, the spark plugs. And if we take a look at this side, you can kind of see how the head works. So, see those circles? Those are the valves. One lets exhaust in, one lets, exhaust out, one lets air and fuel mixture come in. Now if you look on the rear here, right there, see that channelway, that causeway? That's where the gasket blew. There's a break right there in the gasket. And as a result, it's leaking. Now you can imagine where the gasket is. This is it right here. Yeah, very thin layer, kind of embossed, embedded a little bit. That's a head gasket. That's all a head gasket is. Just a thin piece of fiber here. You kind of see it separates a little bit. Let me see if I can pull it off. A fingernail. Let me grab a screwdriver real quickly. But that is it. That's the thing that broke. That's the thing that's causing me so much heartburn. Now, I'm going to get this head resurfaced. What that means is, basically just like this, I'm going to pull all the pull rods out. I'm going to check the push rods, make sure that they're in good, safe quality, they're not worn or damaged, and replace any that are. But this whole thing, as it is, this whole assembly, as I pulled it off, minus these rods, I'm going to send this over to British Standard Motors, and they charge me for a couple $100. They're going to resurface the whole thing, sandblast it, clean it up, inspect it. But this is the head gasket. Why? Come on. It's like super well done. There we go. So you can kind of see it separating here. See that break? That's it. That's where it blew. That's been the cause of my troubles and the reason why I can't drive my car around. So we're going to peel this off. They're going to resurface everything underneath it, do a real quick inspection, make sure everything is good to go, and that should be it. In a week, when I get the head back, we'll put it back on the car and we'll fire it up and see how it goes. Thanks for everyone that joined. Thanks for the questions as well. It's been fun. I'm probably going to stream a bit more like these in the future, but that's it. That's how you remove the head on an MG Midget. Or really any type, any Series A engines from on British cars, MG, Triumph, any British heritage cars. Cool. So let's switch this around a little bit. Look at my face grow in real time. Holy crap. It's I don't look good. I should not be on camera. So for these, the materials will vary quite a bit. So for example, here's a gasket. This gasket's used for the carburetors. Most of these are about this thin. They are like a composite fiber material. So it really depends. I know on like super early gaskets, they were like very thin sheets of metal even, with some porous cardboard or cork material. Each of them will change. It really varies. The newer ones are all like composite-made materials that are designed to withstand the heat, that expand to make sure that they cover every gap. So it really just depends on the year you're using. I'm going to go with whatever British Standard Motors, I think that's their name, whatever they recommend. They've been rebuilding these cars and these engines for a while, so they've got the best scope on these. When I do get the new stuff in, the new bolts, the new nuts, the new rods, and the head that's been refinished, I'll let you know what materials we come up with, the build, and the cost for everything. Should be under $500 to do everything I'm talking about here, from resurfacing the head to getting all the parts that need to be replaced. But we're going to end it there. I'm going to edit this video for brevity because it's a lot of me just making mistakes. So I'll upload that later. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good rest of your day.